Hello and welcome to the YYC Soccer Podcast. My name is Jason Komet and my co-host is Scott Strasser. Hey, Scott.
Hey, Jason.
So, another weekend recap episode. Some matches this weekend. Kind of a good day today to watch soccer inside.
Absolutely, yeah. Which I know you didn't get to do exactly, but I did. As we'll get into. But yeah, very wet and cold. I think we're scheduled to get like 100 millimeters of rain this week. So very wet week in Calgary, and both of the city's professional teams were in action today, and you and I both watched separate games. I watched Cavalry on the TV, and you watched the Wild at MacWoman Stadium. So different experiences for us.
Yeah, very different experiences, and I'm very impressed with anyone that spent any time out there in the rain today, and I'm kind of wondering how I'm going to manage it tomorrow up in Edmonton.
Yeah, me too. We're both going up to watch Canada versus Uzbekistan at Commonwealth this week, and been told to dress accordingly because the game will be happening. And I'm not sure about this, but I think Edmonton might be getting even more rain than Calgary at the moment.
That's what I've heard. But I don't know exactly how to quantify that. But yeah, I guess we'll have to check it out. But it's definitely not ideal conditions. But hey, we go with it anyway.
Absolutely. So why don't we talk about today's games first, and then we'll, as usual, recap the Friday night action in the Alberta Premier League. Let's kick things off with Cavalry versus Forge.
Hi, I'm Eric Kobza. Welcome to the YYC Soccer Podcast.
So we had a top of the table clash on Sunday afternoon in a much warmer Hamilton, where Cavalry faced Forge Sunday afternoon, and another pretty tight matchup, but the Cavs' invincible season is now over.
Yeah, Cavalry losing for the first time in the CPL in 2026 in what was their 8th game of the season. 1-0 with the only goal of the game coming in the 70th minute from Antoine Baptiste, who headed home the second phase after Tristan Borges' corner kick was met by Daniel Nimick. Yeah, good corner kick from Borges, and Daniel Nimick out-muscling / pushing Eric Kobza to get his head on the ball, and then Baptiste made no mistake to score his second of the season. But yeah, that ends the invincible run for Cavalry, 8 games in. Still a great start to their season, but of course disappointing to see their run end against their arch nemesis, Forge.
Yeah, I actually wanted to ask you about that whole Nimick Kobza dust up there. It seemed like there was a lot going on there when I was watching it.
Yeah, Tommy Wheeldon Jr. did use his challenge card, his first one, on this play, and I can see why. Like, there was definitely some pushing and shoving going on between Kobza and Nimick, but I think the ref made the right call, and he only watched it for a few seconds before confirming his original decision that the goal should stand. But yeah, Kobza was kind of getting into it with everybody in this game. He got a yellow pretty early on. And I can't remember the Forge player's name, but he also got a yellow early on for 2 fouls on Kobza. So this has been a pattern I've noticed with Eric Kobza. He's kind of become Cavalry's muscle in the middle. Like, he's definitely playing a very physical game. And this play, I think, Daniel Nimick is a bigger guy than I kind of remember him. I think he was.
Yeah, he's a big guy.
Yeah. Like, he looks like he's been bulking in the offseason this year. Like, he's pretty muscular now. I remember him being a bit lankier, but maybe I'm not remembering correctly. But honestly, can't fault Cavalry too much on Forge's goal. I think, like, it was pretty well worked by them. And Tristan Borges, once again from that corner flag, like, he just puts the most dangerous balls in game after game against Cavalry, it seems.
Cavalry had some chances. They weren't able to put the ball in the back of the net despite some very close calls.
Yeah. So the way this game kind of went was it was a very cagey first half, just like the last time these two teams played when it finished 0-0. And then at the hour mark, both teams made, I think, 2 or 3 subs each, right? And very attack-minded subs. And then Forge, as mentioned, took the 1-0 lead in the 70th minute. And then for the rest of the game, it was all Cavalry. I mean, they had 75% of the possession in the last 20 or so minutes and kept pushing right until the 97th minute. Kenija Elva had 2 chances, both off headers. And honestly, the second one was, I would call it a sitter. Like, he definitely should have scored. I think the first one was a little bit more difficult, but still a really good chance. And I think another player had a decent chance as well. So yeah, Cavalry, definitely could have claimed the 3 points in this one, if not 1 point. But overall, I'm sure they're pissed off on the plane ride home to have lost this game 1-0.
Yeah, I think it was Toby. Didn't he hit the crossbar at some point?
Oh yeah, no, that was in the first half, and that was a really nice shot, but that was kind of from nothing. Like, that was an out of the box shot when he had 2 players on him. It was kind of, everyone was surprised by that, I think. But yeah, that was a really good chance, pinged off the crossbar.
Okay. I guess that leaves Cavalry back in second place where they were for most of the rest of the season, except for this past week. They are on 17 points in 8 matches, two behind Forge, and they're still 5 ahead of Toronto. Now, Toronto has a game in hand, but they've got a little bit of a cushion between second and third, at least.
Yeah, as you and I have talked about, like, Forge and Cavalry seem to be the top 2 teams already this year. It seems like they're starting to pull away, but no, Inter Toronto probably has something to say about that. And honestly, Ottawa's made it up to 4th, and they're playing a bit better than they were in the first few games of the season. Yeah, Inter Toronto is actually playing Cavalry quite soon, June 10th, I believe, out at York Lions Stadium. Before that, actually, they play Forge. So a tough week and a half coming up for Inter Toronto, playing the teams in first and second. And I think that'll be a good test for them. And we as fans can see, like, how serious is this Inter Toronto team in pushing to challenge Forge and Cavalry this year.
Yeah, definitely. Anything else you want to talk about in this match, Scott, before we move on and start talking about the Wild?
I noticed the Payton brothers were playing against each other. That was kind of fun. Ben Payton, who's Harry Payton's brother, plays for Forge. And they actually, I think at one point, Harry fouled Ben. So I think the commentator, Adam Jenkins, got a kick out of that one. Otherwise, the only other thing I think of note is that Kyle Becker came on at the very end to some applause. He's obviously missed the first quarter of the season following a testicular cancer diagnosis, reminiscent of Marco Carducci missing the start of the 2022 season for the same reason. And if you think about it, very similar statuses that both of those players had at their respective clubs, right? Like, he's obviously Forge's club captain and kind of their cult hero. So I was actually, as much as Cavalry fans probably dislike Kyle Becker, it was great to see him make his return to the CPL.
Oh, definitely. At the end of the day, like, it's still just a game, and this is people's health and everything. So, but yeah, it's always good to see a return like that, for sure.
For sure.
Hi, my name is Kaylee Hunter, and you're listening to the YYC Soccer Podcast.
As mentioned, Jason, you were at MacWoman Stadium today for the Calgary Wild's home match against AFC Toronto. First time playing them this season, coming off of a pretty bruising 4-0 loss to Halifax last weekend. Hoping to rebound from that one, but did not happen.
Definitely did not happen. They lost 4-0 to AFC Toronto in another performance, which I would say was not great.
Yeah, I watched the highlights of this one, and it didn't have enough time today to catch both Cavalry and the Wild games, but brutal way to start the game with Caitlin Talbert gifting AFC Toronto a goal in the 11th minute. They went into the half 1-0 down, but then the floodgates kind of opened after that, and Toronto walked to a 4-0 win.
In the latter parts of the first half after that goal, the game seemed still a little bit tight. I'd still say that, the Wild weren't playing that great and Toronto was playing better than they were, but you kind of felt like, maybe Maya Jones could produce a little bit of magic or something, and then they could go in at halftime drawn at 1, but that didn't happen. But then once it hit the second half and that Kaylee Hunter goal in the 48th minute, you just knew that just kind of broke everyone's back.
I guess the morale on this team is so low that going down 2-0, it's like subconsciously they all know that there's no coming back from that.
I was at the post-match press conference with Sinead McSharry, and I have some of the audio from that. We're going to insert it here now.
Alrighty, Sinead, tough day, but better effort overall, you say? Or
Yeah, no, definitely. I said to them in the circle, compared to maybe the Halifax game, I didn't feel overly disappointed. I thought they had, I don't know how many shots, 6 or so. They converted 4, probably a little bit too easily. I actually missed the middle 2, didn't see how they kind of happened. But I think overall, the team tried to execute the game plan. I think some elements were better in our recognition of what the opposition was giving us. And we tried to give some adjustments through the first half. And yeah, I thought they took those and tried to bring them to life. And our biggest focus in this game was the in-possession element, because I think we've done a pretty good job the last couple of games trying to implement some of our out-of-possession principles. But yeah, still not putting the ball closer to where we need it to be to obviously put the ball in the back of the net. And then, yeah, just small details like small individual actions to be able to be more, keep the cleanliness of our possession at a level that's, going to give us those opportunities in front of goal. So I thought there we need to just be tidier.
Where do you go from here?
Yeah, so we've got a few days off and we have a bye week this week. So they have Monday through Wednesday off. Then we'll be back on the pitch on Thursday, Friday, Saturday for 3 days of training. So yeah, we just Mouse spoke as well in the circle. We just need to take these 3 days to do what we need to do to get back on top. I said to them, the best ability is your availability. So taking care of your body, your mind, and also using this period to reflect on, what do you want this team to look like and what can you help bring forth in this next block, which is, we go into block 2 of games now.
Incrementally, you're raising Maya's playing time. What did you see from the 45 minutes or so from her today?
Yeah, she played out of position, so to speak. It's a position she can play, but we knew she was taken on for the team by helping us maybe be a little more front-footed because she's quite aggressive and she brings a good intensity from a pressing standpoint. So we wanted her closer to their back 3. Also managing different minutes so the rotations and substitutions kind of dictate your game plan a bit. But yeah, she didn't get the ball as much as she probably hoped and we hoped. And that was just our recognition of swinging the ball a bit quicker. But yeah, it's good to always have her on the pitch. She's a leader by example. And, her movement is always like 110%. And that's what we need from everybody.
What's the mood like in the room? Like, I know we've heard, before about they're a good group. They're really together. They're a tight group. But these are tough. This is a tough start to the season. What's it like in there right now?
Yeah, I would say, there's people that are upset. There's people that are recognizing that some elements of what we talked about were better from game to game, like the things that we're tracking, our KPIs, like that shows. I think Halifax was pretty low. So it was, we set a pretty high bar in coming into this game. We know we've never beaten Toronto, so that is a high expectation. But I would say the mood overall is quiet, but reflective, and it's still positive. You have to be positive in these moments. These are the moments that really stretch you and test you and weigh you down. And, the big thing is you have to be able to cope with that weight before you are given the opportunity to win.
Was there anything specific that stood out to you about your group's performance today in a positive way that you're hoping to kind of build on forward?
Yeah, there were some individual defensive actions that I thought were good across the board. Like, we've talked about not giving teams so much respect when they have the ball. We need to be tighter distances wise. I think we saw some really good individual tackles, like a little bit more of that ferocity that we need, especially when one of your values is grit, and we need to be displaying that both in possession. I think it's easier to measure it out of possession, and that was an easy piece to our team to kind of show what we wanted. And, I thought the warm-up was good. Like, people didn't really bat an eyelid at the weather, and we kept that all positive. And you kind of expect that at this level, but it can easily sway a team one way or the other. So yeah, I was proud of them for some of those individual battles. I think collectively they tried to implement the game plan, and some moments of it, I think we had moments of it, we just didn't have enough of those moments, and they weren't, we'd get there and then like they were kind of 3/4 of the way. So it needs to be a lot better in that detail of like maintaining the ball. And yeah, just being a bit more dangerous, or a lot more dangerous actually, which just need to be a lot more threatening. So that's still a big work on for us, is how can we be more threatening in the final third, both on and off the ball.
Talk about the group. Like, do you feel like this is the group of players that you want to have. And like, it's just a matter of like making some changes. Or do you feel like, there's a couple extra roster spots? Like, do you want to be thinking about bringing in people or making changes? Because that's whenever a team is losing, kind of think that's a sort of a thing that might be asked.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't had our full roster, right? So it's hard to measure what we've got when we haven't had the full group, in training, never mind in games. I think we saw collectively what our full potential is with everyone healthy and being competitive when we were in England, and we were able to see everything we had been working on in that way. Yeah, we're aware. I mean, we're always recruiting. That doesn't stop. You do that at least twice a week. We're kind of focusing on that. We're always talking to agents. We're always recruiting. Obviously, we know we've got a transfer window coming up. So we're looking to bring some people in on trial to just like everybody else is. But yeah, I mean, we have ideas of where we might need to bolster the squad. But in terms of knowing what this team is capable of, I don't think we've seen that yet. Apart from in training where we get to see a bit more than you guys, because people aren't obviously limited to minutes. They're training, an hour and a half to 2 hours a day with us in different capacities. But so we're able to, make those changes, and we'll be able to kind of see what that looks like in the next month or two.
Jason, I think we have to talk about the goalkeeping. If you look at the standings, the Wild have conceded 17 goals in 5 games. They've scored, I think, 4 in 5 games.
Correct.
But I know it's not all on the goalkeepers. Like, defending has been really questionable on a lot of these goals. But today, AFC Toronto, according to the Wild's own game recap, had 5 shots on target. 4 of them went in. And last week, I noticed it was also, I think, the goalkeeping from Talbot was just not good enough last game. And I remember in the first few games of the season, Molly Race looked really nervous at times. And I think, that's maybe understandable. Maybe didn't expect to be getting, a couple of games right off the hop. But I think there's not been an improvement from Steph Vukovic this year.
My original thought, the first bit when we saw Caitlin Talbot, I thought she was I was impressed with some of her abilities, but yeah, now that the sample size is getting bigger, I'm kind of less optimistic there, I would say. We can sort of like single out mentioning her, but watching that match, there were other players that were out there today that I think their performances weren't exactly coated in glory either. I'm kind of shocked sometimes. Like, there are so few people that ever get the chance to be a pro athlete and get paid for playing their sport. And these players out there right now, they've made it. And right now, with all the injuries, even some of the players who maybe wouldn't have got tons of minutes, they're out there all the time right now. And this is their big chance to really show that they deserve to have a long pro career. And I don't see anybody taking the ball and running with it, so to speak. Like, they just look listless out there. They look like they're not, I don't know. I wish there's a better way to say it, but it's just,
I hate for us to have to dump on them every week when we do these recaps, but I mean, they're coming off of 2 back-to-back 4-0 defeats to the 2 teams that are directly ahead of them in the standings, right? Like, Halifax is, I think, second last, and AFC Toronto is in third last, aka 4th. So if you're gonna lose at home to the teams directly ahead of you, like, who are you gonna beat and how? And I appreciate the comments about how there's been so many injuries and, the team isn't at their peak because of the players who are missing. But there were 8 players on the injured list for the second game of the season. And why are there so many players out at that point of the season? Like, what happened in preseason that they all got hurt? But I don't know. I like I said, I didn't watch this game, Jason, but I mean, again, no Maggie Doherty Howard is, how big of a concern is it that she's not there at the moment? And she's probably not going to be there for a little while at least.
That's another thing I kind of want to talk about that I've noticed in these last couple games without Maggie Doherty Howard is there are some other veteran players on this team. There are players with a lot of experience, a lot of leadership experience. Jackie Sawicki is the captain of the Philippines women's national team. She's one of the veteran players, one of the oldest players on the team. Sonia O'Neill has one of the older players. She's got a long career. with Maggie gone, like these are the players that I think really need to fill in her stead. If we're going to talk about specific players, those are two players which, as veteran players, I think they should be leading more and being more involved in the match, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Did Moore play at all today?
She came in like with less than 10 minutes to go.
Okay.
So the Wild are in sixth place at the bottom of the NSL table, 1 point. And they are 6 points behind Halifax and AFC Toronto, who have that fourth and fifth positions. So they're 6 points deep in the basement after 5 games.
Yeah, and as mentioned, 2 bruising defeats to the teams in fourth and fifth, directly above them. So fortunately for the Wild, they have a bye next week, so maybe some of their injured players can be back in time for their upcoming game. But they actually have a couple of road games coming up later this month, so they're going to have some of the travel challenges to contend with. So we'll see how they cope with playing a couple of games on the road, including that big road trip out to Halifax, which I believe is up next for them.
The Wild have had 4 home matches so far this season out of their first 5 games, and they've had bad weather for 3 of them. And I think today was the worst. Like, it was really, really awful out there. I did not see an announced attendance, but in my position in the press box across from where the crowd sits, I could count the people, right? Like, I tried counting at the end near the end of the first half, and I had about 300-ish or so. And by the time the game was over, it was over 100, but not much more than over 100. I could just sit there and count them. Like, the weather was horrendous, but that's pretty awful.
Oh yeah. I'm sure the announced attendance will be higher because I think they go off of ticket sales. But I'm sure a lot of people with season tickets just didn't come to this one. How worrisome do you think that is? I mean, obviously, like, the product they're putting out right now is not going to make a lot of new fans, and if they're not holding on to the fans that they've got, then what do you do from that front? Because you don't want to be losing hundreds of fans every game, because that's going to affect your bottom line too.
Well, I think right now, like, it's going to be very hard to create new fans with the way the team is. If you were in a position where you liked the idea of the Wild and about women's sport and about, that you identified with the team, they already have those people. Like, they already have those fans on their side. So
I think
you're now, like, the people that aren't going to games or aren't watching them, the inspirational part is not going to move them. What's going to move them is a good game day experience, an entertaining team, a team that doesn't lose by multiple goals, scores every now and then. I don't know. I just think right now that there's no way to grow your attendance like this. And even your loyal fans, like, I think it's really, really hard watching your team. Even if the weather was better, it's really hard to watch your team lose 3-0, 4-0 every match, not scoring any goals. The games aren't close. I don't know. It doesn't bode well, right? But something is going to have to change because, I don't know how long it's going to take to bring in a new head coach or what's going to happen. But very quickly, if this keeps going the way it goes, a playoff position won't be in the cards. Like, it could be like soon, like July.
Yeah, end of June could be over.
Hi, this is McKenna Walker, and you're listening to the YYC Soccer Podcast.
All right, now it's time to review some Friday night results in the Alberta Premier League. There were really 3 sets of matches. We'll start out on the men's side. Cavalry 2 was up in St. Albert. They played the Impact, and they kind of blew the doors off the Impact.
Yeah, 5-1. Zario Reyes with a brace, Jax Wielden, Daniel Kribitov also scoring, and then an own goal from former Cavalry trialist Vladislav Satsevich, the Ukrainian refugee that we talked about when he was on trial with the Cavs. Pretty one-sided game up in St. Albert.
And back in Calgary, there was an all-Calgary matchup, Callies and Rangers, and Callies was able to get their first win of the season. They defeated Rangers 3-2.
With goals coming from Osaji Ihobaku and a brace from Brady DeCastro. And then Rangers, 2 goals came from Eric Kim and P. Samatakis.
And the Blizzard men defeated BTB 4-0. Goals for the Blizzard were from Josal Frederick, Milan Ponjevic, William Omarone, and Dominic Anamali. That's the men's results. And on the women's side, we saw the Wild head up to St. Albert, and Wild U23, they're having a good year.
Yes, and that continued on Friday night with a 2-1 win over St. Albert. Their goals coming from Jordan McQueen and Jada Jones. And Blizzard also with the win this weekend, 3-2 over BTB. This was at the West Dome, and McKenna Walker scoring a brace, and then Ashlyn Phillips with the other goal. So a couple of former podcast guests getting in on the goal action.
And Cali's women, they also got their first win of the year. A big weekend for Cali's. The men and women both got their first win. But Cali's women defeated Rangers 2-1. Ali Tanis and Annalisa Galvez got the goals for Cali's, and Grace Moore from the Dinos scored for Rangers.
Yeah, so let's talk about how those results shape the table for both divisions. On the women's side, as you mentioned, Calgary Wild U23, 4 wins and a loss from their opening 5 games with 12 points. That puts them in first place, 2 points ahead of the Blizzard.
The Blizzard have a game in hand on them, though, and they're 3-0-1. They haven't lost yet, so it's overall pretty tight there. But after that, yeah, St. Albert, they're in third place with 7 points, and Foothills with 6, Rangers with 4, BTB also with 4, and then Villains and Cali's at the bottom with 3 points.
Yeah, but Foothills have a game in hand, so if they do win their 4th game of the season, that would put them up to 9 points, which would put them in third place.
Yeah, that's true. So you even look at it, yeah, and they've only played 3 matches, and the Wild have played 5, and they're 6 points behind the Wild. So actually, in theory, if they won the 2 games they had in hand against the Wild, they would be tied with them. So yeah, that's a worthwhile point for sure.
And on the men's side, Blizzard, I think not to much of our surprise, Jason, they have a 4-0 start to the season, 12 points with 10 goals for and just 1 goal against.
And BTB is actually tied with them on points. They've got 12 points. They have had an extra match, but yeah, they're tied up at the top. And in third place is Foothills, again, with only 3 matches. And their record is also perfect, 9 points in 3 matches. And also the same goal differential, 10 goals for and 1 goal against, just like Blizzard.
But those two, I guess you could call them original Calgary teams. Great start to the season. I expect this to continue. But below Foothills in the table, Cavalry FC 2, they have a 3-3 record, so definitely in the middle of the pack. And below them, Cali's United. Pretty big gap between them, though. They're 5 points back of Cavalry, and then St. Albert Impact, Villains, and Rangers bringing up the rear.
Everything on the men's side's pointing to a 3-horse race for sure. I think the Foothills Blizzard, from a Calgary perspective, that's going to be, those matches are going to be huge.
Yeah, I agree.
So there's only one doubleheader to talk about in APL on Tuesday. That's Villains playing Foothills at West Island College on Tuesday evening. Women at 5 and men at 7:30.
So this is another Villains game at West Island College, I guess?
Yeah, I think they played one other match there this year, and I think last year they played there once or twice.
Yeah. Have you been there?
I was there last weekend, although I was not there in a football watching capacity. I was there. My daughter was in a basketball tournament, and it was at West Island College. So in between matches, I had a walk around to the back, and I everything was unlocked. So I took a little bit of a walk through that facility, which is pretty new. I think it opened last year. And I got to tell you, it's pretty nice. I was pretty impressed with it.
Does it have other sports lines like football or anything?
I don't think it has football lines. I don't think there was any sign they had football goalposts, but they had other lines, I think, for, I'm presuming lacrosse, and there were other lines on there. And they've got seating there, like bleacher style seating. You could probably, I would say there's maybe like 300 seats total. Like, you could actually put more seats in there if you wanted to. It's a nice little setup right now, the way it is. And they got a real scoreboard, which, when you consider some APL venues, that's a bit unusual because, Broadview doesn't have a scoreboard, and a couple other places don't. So So yeah, a nice little setup. I think I'm gonna have to try and make it to a match there, and just to see what it looks like. Thank you for listening to the YYC Soccer Podcast. You can have this podcast downloaded to your device as soon as it becomes available by subscribing on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or other platforms. Check out our website at yycsoccer.com, where you can look through our episode archive and find other options to listen, including our YouTube channel. We also have links there to buy Scott's book, Here Come the Cavalry. It's all about the history of pro soccer in Calgary. You can leave a question or comment in the Contact Us section of our website. You can interact with us on social media such as X, Instagram, or Blue Sky, where our username is @YYC Soccer 403. Thanks for listening.